I used to think that putting was all about touch, feel, instinct. Turns out my instincts were garbage. But once I learned and started applying these 3 tips, everything changed. Welcome to Putting Genius Mode. Oh, and by the way, I added a 4th bonus tip just for fun. Genius tip number 1, learn to roll it dead straight. Because if your ball isn't starting where you think it is, nothing else matters. In my observation, most golfers don't have the ability to know whether or not they roll the ball dead straight or not, because they make mistakes in setup, in aligning the putter face, and the fact is keeping this putter face square to your target line is 80% of whether you miss or make the putt. You've got to learn to roll it dead straight. So train yourself on that. One of the things that I do is use a gate drill, and you can see I have it set up here. I'm using my 1-putt ruler because it's got a guide and 5 inches behind the ball to help me keep the face square to the target line. It's got an intermediate target 9 inches out in front of the ball. And so what I do is I put a gate at the end of the 1-putt ruler, just the width of the ruler, because I want to roll the ball between that gate. And then 3 or 4 inches out in front of that, I put another gate with 2 tees, just the width of a golf ball. And I put a golf ball between them like I'm doing here. And then I set up and practice rolling putts straight up that line between the gates on the 1-putt ruler. And I want this ball that I'm rolling to hit that second ball that's between the tees and knock it forward. If I miss any at all, left or right, then that ball that I putted will go out to one side or the other. It won't go in between the tees or through the gate, which is what I want. And I do this, when I do this, I'll do sets of 100. And I'm trying to stroke it straight up that target line 100 times in a row. You can do something similar to this with some tees or with the 1-putt ruler or another training device, but work on rolling the ball straight for 9 inches and make your tolerance just another golf ball. You cannot miss. You have to hit that other golf ball dead center. When you can do that, you're rolling putts straight. What you'll discover and what's genius about this is it alters your setup and your stroke, and you're grooving a new pattern and process for your ball to roll the ball straight. The reason this is genius is because it builds trust and confidence in your start line, which equates to trust and confidence in your green read and the speed that you're stroking the putt. Another reason it's genius is it takes out the stroke bias that we all develop because we have problems rolling it straight in our stroke, and we start aiming the other direction to compensate for that, and now we have a stroke bias and an aiming bias. It's genius because doing this eliminates all those biases and gives you a solid, consistent stroke. Learn to master start line. Genius tip number 2 is develop a plan and a process for controlling speed and distance. Distance is boss in putting. Doesn't matter how good your line is or your green read is, if you can't roll at the right distance, you're not going to hole very many putts. And if you leave it short all the time, I remind you what Confucius said, holes seldom come to ball. So here I want to give you 1 concept and 2 ways to practice to master your speed and distance control. First is the concept. We're not controlling speed and distance by hitting some putts harder and softer. I believe in using the same tempo on every stroke and controlling the speed and distance with the length of that stroke. Talked a lot about that, done whole videos on that. We're not going to cover that here. Let's talk about 2 ways to work on that. One is a practice method, and here's what you do. You go out on the practice green when you practice, and you step from the fringe out a certain number of steps. Here I've chosen 3 steps from the fringe, and then I stick a tee in the ground. And then I go 4 or 5 more steps past that tee, and I put down 4 balls. Now what I want to do is roll the first ball just barely past that tee. If I leave it short, I got to start all over again. If I leave any of these short, I've got to start all over again. I want the first ball barely past that tee. I want the second ball past the first ball. I want the third ball past that one. And here, I really didn't leave myself much space to get that fourth one between the third ball and the fringe. It's going to be a challenge. Let's see how I do. And there it is. That's what you want to do. Work on getting 4 balls a specific distance, but not all the way out to the fringe. Learn to progressively, it's a ladder drill. But if you do that, work on some downhill like I was here. Here's me working on some uphill, but work on downhill, uphill, flat. Learn to control distance in a small, tight window like that. And you can spread it out, get 15 feet, so 5 steps from the fringe, and then 5 more steps back to where you start, and try to get 4 or 5 balls between that tee and the fringe. You do that, you'll master speed and distance control out on the course. That's all the practice you ever need for speed and distance control. But I'm going to give you a couple of more ideas anyway. Second one is a drill I call the KISS drill. All you do is you go out on the practice green, you drop 1 ball, and you kind of swat it, and you watch it roll. Then you drop the second ball, you go through your routine like it was a putt, and you try to roll that second ball up to where it just touches that first ball. You're working on getting a consistent distance. You can manage speed and distance that well. You're never going to 3-putt because your first putt always stops close to the hole. That is putting genius. Now let's add to that practice with something you should do every day before you go out on the course for a round, and that's simply go out. First thing you do on the practice green before you play is set up and make some strokes at some balls, but decide the length of the backstroke that you're going to do in advance. For instance, you might go toe back, toe through. You might go middle of foot back, middle of foot through, inside back and through, all the way to your pinky toe back and then through. But see how the ball rolls on this green, on this course, on this day, based on the size of stroke. Step that off and see how far it is. Now you have a benchmark for this course that tells you exactly how far you need to move the putter to get the distance that you want. The only time this doesn't work is if you're playing a course where the superintendent is doing a terrible job and the practice green is nothing like the greens on the course. I know that happens sometimes. You just have to do the best you can there and adjust. Folks, speed influences how much putts break, how close they finish near the hole, and the fact is, putting geniuses own speed control. Genius tip number 3 is learn to read greens. Putting geniuses have a process and a plan for reading greens. It's not just a guess. Now, I know a lot of people go out and they stand on the green and kind of eyeball it or stare, and then, yeah, I think it's going to break this way, and then they stroke the putt. That's not green reading, and as long as you do that, you're going to have some 3-putts. Get a process, something that you use. I don't care if it's aim point, tour read, plumb bobbing, whatever you do. I use a method called EGOS, which is Expert Green Reading Operating System, developed by Andrew Walters. I've done tons of videos on the EGOS method on the channel. There's a playlist in the video description that'll get you to all of those. It's a great, fast, easy way to learn to read greens. Sometimes it gets complicated in the details and the explanation, but if you just follow the instructions, it works. By the way, I have a really inexpensive EGOS Green Reading Masterclass, also linked in the video description. It'll give you a process for learning to read greens. Now, let me give you some help until you learn how to read greens. And that is, Always allow more break than you think. If you're going to miss to the high side. Putting geniuses miss to the pro side. Here's why, and this is the genius thing. Don't get bogged down in the details, but a putt that is started too low will miss by 3 times the distance that it started too low. So if you start a putt 6 inches low, it'll miss the cup by 18 inches because it's breaking faster as it catches that low side hill and goes away from the hole. Putts that you start high miss by half the distance that you started. So you start a putt 6 inches too low, it misses by 18 inches. You start a putt 6 inches too high and it misses by 3 inches. Aim to the high side. Visualize and see the ball going in on the high side. I do a practice drill a lot of times where I'll cover or block the lower half of the hole so that I'm training myself to visualize and see the ball going in the high side and to have to aim to where my ball goes in the middle to the high side of the hole. There's no room to sneak it in the back door. You practice like that, your misses will be a lot closer and you'll make more. So until you're deadly accurate with your reads, always favor the high side. The reason that having a consistent, accurate process for reading greens is genius is you stop guessing and start predicting. And even your misses are tap-ins. Genius tip number 4 is have fun sometimes in your practice. Go out and do some things like turn around and stick the putter behind you between your legs and make some putts like that. Putt some with your eyes closed. Putt to a teeny tiny, not even one of those small holes, but putt with a dime or a quarter as your target for ending the putt on top of that. Putt backwards. Putt with one hand only. Do some silly things so that you relax and get comfortable and confident and you're not all inside your head, because geniuses know how to control and manage their thoughts. And by the way, geniuses have discipline and control their thoughts and control their outcomes, which means if you truly want genius mode in your putting, you'll have the discipline and put in the time and the effort to follow these 4 simple tips, and your putting will drastically improve. So roll it straight, control your speed, trust your read, and have fun. That's the genius formula. And the best part is you don't have to change your stroke. You just have to train smarter. If you got something positive out of this video, then you know the drill. Like, subscribe, comment, share it with a friend. Check out the video that's going to pop up here on the screen in a second. If you need help with green reading, check out the EGOS playlist or the EGOS Green Reading Masterclass. The first video in that is free for any of you. And if you need help with your stroke overall, I've also put a link to my course, How to Putt the Right Way. Until next time, here's to you, training smarter, playing smarter, and holing more putts.